Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, death slayers, peasants, vassals, minions. I'm Useful Idiot. Today I want to talk about the Kurds, specifically the PKK. And the reason why this is an interesting story is because the PKK are a Kurdish group originally involved in the struggle against Turkey, inside Turkey, for Kurdish rights in Turkey. And now they're generally in northern Iraq, in the autonomous Kurdistan region, and now they're fighting against ISIS with the Kurds in northern Iraq and working ostensibly with the United States as well. So it's kind of problematic, as you can see, because once again we have a group that's labeled as a terrorist organization that the U.S. is willing to work with in the right situations. And I'm not making a judgment on the PKK as to whether they're terrorists or not. That's not really the point. The point being the double standards of American foreign policy, and then just the interesting fact that we have the PKK now being a formidable counterforce against ISIS, or the Islamic State, in Iraq now. And this will be like the good old days when I used to do long videos with a little more historic background. So I'm going to do a little background on the PKK for those who are not quite as familiar with them. And so this is a group that essentially has an existence from 1984 to 2013, and basically involved in an armed struggle with Turkey for Kurdish autonomy and the respect of Kurdish rights in Turkey, which is understandable considering they're somewhere between 10 and 25% of the population of Turkey. And they were originally founded in 1978, and they're more or less a Marxist radical group. So they have a long history, and they also, the PKK is interchangeable with the political and the military entity of both the Kurdistan Workers' Party and the People's Defense Force. And as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of ironic that NATO, which Turkey is a member, the United States and the EU all list the PKK as a terrorist group, and incidentally, so does Iran. And other countries that list the PKK as a terrorist group are actually Australia, Austria, Azerbaijan, Canada, Germany, Iran, Japan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Netherlands, New Zealand, Spain, and Syria. So an interesting array of countries that consider this PKK group a terrorist group. And in fact, they kind of have earned that reputation, as it turns out. In the 1980s, they were known for a string of international terrorist attacks against both civilian and military targets in Europe and the Middle East. And then in the 1990s, there was a lot of high-profile suicide attacks. In 1999, the founder of the group, Öcalan, was captured and put in prison and sentenced to death, and still languished in prison through most of the 2000s. And incidentally, one of the first training camps for the PKK was in the Bekaa Valley with support from Syria and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. So once again, these connections with known supporters of what we now know of as terrorism. So the PKK certainly has that pedigree. And in the 2000s, the PKK mostly operated in the mountains between Iraq and Turkey, and with occasionally having training camps in Europe, notably Belgium and Netherlands, both closed down. But it's an insurgency. Once again, in the Kurdish history, annals of history, they will be freedom fighters. In the Turkish annals of history, they will be terrorists. And that's how it will be until one side or the other prevails. And interestingly enough, too, in 2011, Iran and Turkey had joint operations against the PKK, because the PKK, obviously an insurgency against Turkey. The PKK also operates as an insurgency in a Kurdish section of Iran. And 2012, actually as recently as 2012, 2 years ago, the conflict between the PKK and Turkey peaked and reached a height that hadn't reached since 1999, with over 541 killed. Then in 2013, just a year ago, a ceasefire was brokered, and the PKK actually moved. Part of this agreement, the PKK didn't disarm, but they moved into northern Iraq. So we have a number of these PKK fighters that originally, at their height, reached a number of 17,000 in the 1990s. But the strength of PKK now is supposedly roughly around 5,000. So they moved into northern Iraq, which is where we find them now. And as you would imagine, the Baghdad government hasn't been too happy about the PKK moving from Turkey into northern Iraq and strengthening the Kurdish position. And in recent events, the PKK forces are the ones that helped Yazidis escape from the mountain there back through Syria and back into northern Iraq and Kurdistan. And most of their weapons have been from Russia via the Middle East, a lot of Eastern European, Czechoslovakian weapons, and it seems like they've had them for quite some time, but they're also supported by Greece, Iran, Iraq, Russia, and Syria, so it's no surprise that they would end up with a lot of Russian weapons, even though it's also rumored that the CIA and Blackwater have been involved in arming them as well. So anyway, there's a bit of background on the PKK, another convenient ally for the United States now, and I'm sure the United States probably hasn't eased their listing of PKK as a terrorist group. They'll just work with them and turn a blind eye. And so once again, we have strange bedfellows in all these events unfolding in the Middle East, and the PKK are another component of that. But as I'll attach a video below, shows PKK fighters in the field against ISIS, and apparently they're quite formidable, and had even more experience than a lot of Peshmerga, and are very versed in this sort of warfare. So nice to have them along at this moment for what many consider the good guys in the situation, the Kurds. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.